to myself again. But it's the only...
Good afternoon and welcome to NUFC Matters. This week it is our birthday week. We've been online now for a year, NUFC Matters, so we're going to do a special 1 hour Q&A with a player each day this week, and we've got my good friend Rob Lee this afternoon. So good afternoon, Rob.
Afternoon, Steve. You all right?
Yeah, good to see you, mate. Good to see you. We'll crack straight on with the questions because we've been inundated with them. Mark Byers is first in. He says, have you ever gotten over the ref ridiculously disallowing that goal from the halfway line? Because I haven't.
It still gets mentioned, would you believe? All these years ago, the only non-goal that I've scored gets mentioned. So, yeah, I still give Joe Allen some stick because he was offside. But yeah, it's all forgotten now. My son scored a better one than me, which is rankles with me a little bit more than that goal, really. So he scored from further out than me against Cambridge a couple of years ago. So he keeps giving me stick that mine didn't count. So
fantastic. All right, good stuff. I'm going to go through the Twitter questions first. So Spenny Mag, he says, who was your favourite player to play with during your career in midfield?
God, wow, it's a tough question. I get asked it a lot. I really enjoyed playing with. First of all, I enjoyed playing with Venners. He came from right back into midfield. I loved playing with him. Then Lee Clark, David Batty was enjoyable, and at the end when I was sitting in, and you know, I had Gary Speed who used to be my legs. So there's so many. Honestly, I've been so privileged to play with so many great players at Newcastle. You don't realise until you look back. You know, I've just hit 55 a couple of weeks ago, and you look back and you realise the players you played with and how good they were. You know, so it's. But at the time when you're playing with them, they're just your mates. You're playing with them, but you know, I look back now, look at some of the clips of some of the players I played with, and it's. You know, I'm very humbled to have been able to play with them players.
Paul Oxley says, "Who's the most famous person you have met apart from Alan Shearer?"
Well, I met Ant and Dec many years ago when I was back in '97 when they were like little sprogs on a little show called Biker Grove, I think it was. They might have just gone to SMTV, but I had to. I always rib them about it, but I was captain and Kenny Dalglish made me go and open something at the ground, and I really didn't fancy going. I was sort of like just finished training, didn't fancy going, and I said, "Who's there?" And he said, "Oh, there's two young presenters and young actors from Biker Grove," and I thought, "Oh God, I can't be arsed with this." And I turned up, and it was them two. And I still text them now. Still sort of like I got this. They're typical Geordies. I've been out when we were younger. We went out on a few nights out in Newcastle with the guys, and just got the same sense of humour as me. Really, I seem to have the same sort of sense of humour as the Geordies, and I've always got on well with them. So yeah, I still text them every now and again, but they're superstars now, aren't they? As they tell me.
Yeah, no doubt about that. Paul09 on Twitter. This is a strange one. As a painter of kits onto Subbuteo teams, I'd like to know what Rob's favourite and least favourite tune kits are that he wore.
Do you know what? I used to love Subbuteo as well. I used to love collecting all Subbuteo and playing Subbuteo. So my favourite kits, I think, was the I don't know if it's because we played so well in it, but the Grandad kit, the home kit. I love the black and white stripes, the home kit with the blue star on it. But also I liked, obviously, you know, I was born in West Ham, and when we played in the claret and blue as well, we had the horizontal stripes in claret and blue, and I love playing with that. Always seemed to Sheffield Wednesday, I think Bolton away, we always seemed to play well in it. So I would say they're my favourite ones. My least favourite was probably when we had a blue one, we've had a grey one. I'm a traditionalist. I like the black and white stripes of Newcastle, you know, and I know companies these days want to flare it up and get it very, you know, so people buy these extravagant kits, but I'm more of a traditionalist, so. I like the good home kit with the stripes, not too thin, not too thick, and then just the normal away kit is good for me. But we've had some shockers. Blue and orange was probably the worst I had.
Good stuff. Okay, Pete, he's got two parts to his question. He says, what was your best Premier League goal for Newcastle?
Best Premier League goal. Wow, that's a tough question. Actually, I think it was. I think it was against Liverpool at home. I think we drew. I think 1-1. But Peter Beardsley put me through, and I was against Razor on the edge of the box, and I just took it on my right foot and hit it as hard as I possibly could. Flew past David James and into the top corner. So. Most of my goals were very similar, as my sons keep reminding me. I was usually just ran through, and Peter Beers or Andy Cole would put me in, and I would normally be one-on-one with a goalie and slot in. So, but I scored. It's been mentioned a few recently. I scored the goal against Coventry away from about 35 yards, which was a bit of a screamer. But so I've been lucky enough to score some very good ones.
Yeah, and of course you scored that goal at Wembley as well, which a lot of Newcastle fans will regret. Will obviously celebrate. Time and time again. It was a great day to be at Wembley. Just pity we didn't get the result, Rob.
Yeah, it's probably the only time that I've played 4 times at Wembley for Newcastle, and probably the only time really we've done ourselves justice. Played the Charity Shield. We just got back from a long trip away to China and the Far East, and just signed Alan Shearer. Didn't play well, and 2 cup finals again. Against 2 great teams probably in their era, Man United and Arsenal. But again, we didn't turn up. And the one against Chelsea with Bobby Robson, we played well. And barring Gus Poyet, we would have. I think that we knew whoever won that game was going to win the cup. Really, that was the semi-final was the game. But yeah, it's one of those things that I can say that I've scored at Wembley for Newcastle, and certainly Mr. Shearer can't say he's done it. So.
Brilliant stuff, Dave. Pete's second part of his question was, what was your initial reaction to Kevin Keegan resigning from the club, and what was the reaction in the changing room the next day when the players got together?
Well, I personally, I was devastated. Everyone knows he was the reason I came to Newcastle initially. He was my idol. He's the reason I wanted to play. I wanted to play for Kevin first, if I'm being honest, and then. Didn't realise really until I got up here how big Newcastle was and the fan base, but he was the initial reason. So I personally was devastated. And I think a lot of players were. I think he persuaded Alan to come here when Alan had all the top teams in Europe after him. David Ginola, I think he persuaded not to go to Barcelona. So I think we was all disappointed, all really disappointed. And I've said it many times too. I think if he'd have been here at Newcastle as long as Sir Alex Ferguson was at Man United, Newcastle certainly wouldn't be where they are today, and without a doubt we'd have won something.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. Great questions, Pete. Geordie Rowe says, Rob, what would you change on the pitch to make this Newcastle team today perform?
Wow, God, that's a good question.
We've only got another 45 minutes.
I think the last few games that we've done well. We've done better than what we've done. So we've won 2 out of 3. So I think it's all about confidence. It's all about players playing well, and our players weren't playing well, bar our goalie, I think, and Callum Wilson. Probably you'd look around the team and think who was actually performing, and it's down to the manager to get those players performing well, and the same players. They're, in my opinion, all the players have done. They've started playing well, and if your players are playing well, you've got half a chance of winning games.
Yeah, no, you do, definitely do. Thanks for your question, Geordie Rowe. Ferry Hill Mags, he says, what was the reason behind Ruud Gullit stripping you of the captain's armband and dropping you from the first team and not giving you a squad number and making you train on your own? That was just one of Gullit's diabolical decisions. He's taking you back to a horrendous time, Rob. But it was crazy, wasn't it? Crazy.
Yeah, I think I was Alan Shearer's mate. That's what done me. No, I don't know. We had a few disagreements over his training methods and how he treated people. He also he sort of like didn't want to play. He wanted to play me because I don't know if it's a European thing, a Chelsea thing. He wanted to play me in certain games. not play me in other games. And I've always been, just play me, and if I play badly, then drop me. It's but I think he had this thing, what they probably use now, which is resting players. That I was playing for England at the time, and in those days, if you wasn't playing for your club, you wouldn't be playing for your country. So we had a few disagreements, and I don't think myself getting on well with Alan, and I think he tried to dismantle a lot of the senior players. It wasn't just me; it was Stuart Pearce, John Barnes, a lot of the senior players who maybe would have said something that he tried to, and Alan Shearer and Duncan Ferguson. In the end, there was a lot of his. If you look at it, a lot of his best players, he was. I think maybe because they're senior players and he wanted to control them a bit better, then he seemed to want to get us out the door.
Okay, good stuff. Lily says, I've watched both series of Harry's Heroes and I loved them. I was wondering, how bad was the bobsleigh ride really?
You know what? The bobsleigh ride, I really, really didn't want to do. I get motion sickness since I was a kid on fairground rides, and I really didn't want to do it, and that's why I was last to go. And I wasn't actually going to do it at all. I trained with the team and done me back as well. And then everyone had been, and Harry fancied having a go. He said, well, it's one of those things I could tick off my bucket list, and he had no one really to go with. So I stupidly agreed to get in the bobsleigh with him. But it's possibly the worst minute, just over a minute, I think it was, of my life. It was, honestly, I was sick. I was sick, I think, for the next 3 hours afterwards, and I felt ill for the next probably 5 or 6. The lads went out for a drink afterwards, and I couldn't, how much I love a drink, Stephen. I couldn't even go on that. So it's off my bucket list. I've done it, and I won't be doing it again.
Brilliant. Dave Cook says, Rob, who in your opinion is Newcastle's worst ever manager? I think that's an easy one.
Well, most people would say Ruud Gullit, and for me, he probably was. But I think we've had a few. Joe Kinnear was probably up there with it. I wasn't there with him, but surely he has to be up there with one of Mike Ashley's weird decisions. So yeah, on a personal level, obviously Ruud Gullit, but he was a top football player, so I can forgive him a little bit, but Joe Kinnear must be up there, I thought. Yeah,
I would say so. Dom from #9Talk, he says, how did the players react when they heard King Kev say on the television that Fergie, I'm coming for your title? That was a massive statement from Kevin and the club, and made the world of football listen. I mean, it was a hell of an interview. He wore his heart on his sleeve, didn't he, Kevin?
Yeah, Kevin, he's shot from the hip. He would tell you what he thought, and he wasn't scared of going into. He didn't want to go into the Premier League. He just won the league. He didn't want to go in the Premier League and say, "Oh, we're going to do okay. We can consolidate when we get in there." And sort of like he was one of these people, and he's one of these people that's he would just say, "Listen, what's the point in going in the league if we're not going to try and win it?" And then he would come out and say that. This is the guy that brought me from Charlton winger, and said to me after a few weeks, he said, "You'll play for England," and he just came out with these sort of like stuff, and the lads just took it the way that he always says things. He told me he'd turn me into a Charlton winger into an England international. You just believe him. He's sort of like he had. I know he loved. I'm just reading his autobiography now. Would you believe it? Now we're in lockdown. I've never read it, and I've just started reading that. And he loved Bill Shankly, and I think reading what he says, he's very much like him. He was, very much like how he made players feel, and he could make, just by talking to you, not by coaching you, or not by doing all these newfangled coaching of different formations, just by talking to you and making you feel like you're a great player, and you could be a great player, and I think he was that good.
Okay, John Gandhi, thanks for your question. He says, I'd love to know Rob's thoughts about Ole Solskjaer's tackle on him after he was through on goal at Old Trafford and he was cynically hacked down. It still gives me rage now. Red card, and it still doesn't seem fair compensation.
Well, it never is it? Listen, if I'm being honest, if it was the other way around, I would have done the same. I would have done the same. He obviously knows when I'm going through one-on-one, I'm going to score because But I would have done exactly the same if he's running through. I mean, it's the last minute. Admittedly, I wasn't going very fast because it was a 90th minute, and my legs were sort of like going in those days. But it's quite funny because I look now at when players bring people down, and I always look at the player and I think, well, I would only bring somebody down and get something if I think he's going to score. If it's a player that goes through and he's not confident, I think you have to let him go. You have to know the players, I think. So I'm hoping that he thought I was going to definitely score, so that's why he brought me down.
Okay, Andrei Avramov got some great questions. He's got a three-parter here. He says, firstly, does Rob blame Kenny Dalglish for ruining the entertainers side?
No, I don't blame Kenny. I think if anybody, even Newcastle fans, probably when Kevin left, the only people that could have got in, I think, was Bobby Robson or Kenny Dalglish. I think at the time he'd won the trophy, won the Premier League with Blackburn. And I think if the people are being honest, they would have probably chosen him. Again, I'm reading Kevin's autobiography, and even I, things that were going on that I didn't even know about. He said that, he was asked to raise money because I think of the, the float that was coming, and they tried selling a few youngsters off, and then he said to the board, well, you can sell Les Ferdinand, you get your $6 million, which is what they wanted back. So I don't know whether that was still going on or whether Kenny, had to sell him. Do you know what I mean? I think that the deal was done certainly very early, so you just don't know what was going on. I certainly, some of the players he bought in, I don't think played well for Newcastle. If I'm being brutally honest, I think a lot of them were poor, and I look at clubs now, and I look at Frank Lampard being sacked by Chelsea. How many of those players did he bring in? But you'd hope in those days that Kenny would have a say in who brought in, because I think that was the difference. I think Kevin ran Newcastle. If a player came in, it was down to Kevin, and everybody knew that. And I think that's the way the game's going now. Players get brought in, and nobody knows who's bringing them in. No one knows which person, whether it be the chairman, the owner, the manager, the director of football, chief scout. Who's brought these players in? And I think managers get blamed for all the players. So I don't blame him. I blame whoever brought the players in, and I blame the players for not playing well for him.
Okay, his second part of his question is, if you had to choose between Andy Cole, Les Ferdinand or Alan Shearer to play with, who would it be?
Oh, listen. Andy Cole and Les are great finishers and players for Newcastle. Alan Shearer is the best centre forward. I hope he's never watches this, but he's the best centre forward that I genuinely think there's been as an all round number 9 centre forward. He was as good as there was. There's different players. There's Messi's and there's Ronaldo's, and there's players that play slightly different. But as the old-fashioned number 9 centre forward, there was nobody better than him. And his goal record of 260 odd goals, and don't forget he had 2, maybe 3 major injuries. He had done his knee twice, done his ankle, was out for probably 3 years in all. So you just wonder how many goals he would have actually got.
Don't worry, Rob. I'll make sure Alan sees this.
Please don't, Steve.
Andrea's final question is a simple one, really. It's a geography question. He says, how far is Middlesbrough from London, Rob?
Well, the old Rob Lee from 30 odd years ago would say it's. I think Newcastle is. I've done Newcastle so many times from my house, and it's about 280 miles. So the old Rob Lee would have said Middlesbrough's at least 300. I've done my geography lessons now, so I know that somebody told porcupines to me when I was younger, and it's a little bit closer than Newcastle. But I'm pleased he did.
Brilliant stuff. A big shout out to our sponsor, Spider VPN, who are sponsoring the StreamYard application this month, and acutexshop.co.uk, the makers of pool tables and snooker tables in Wallsend and Newcastle, and a lot of our graphics. Also make our t-shirts, which you can pick up from newcastlelegends.com. And also a big shout out to John from Jab Signature, who does all of our flyers. So big shout out to all the sponsors. Today we'll crack on with the questions in the chat in a minute. I've only got a couple more to go from Twitter. George McVeigh, following on from on that geographical theme says, how close were you for signing for Middlesbrough before Kevin told you that?
Mate, I couldn't hear that question. I lost it.
All right, yeah, George McVeigh, just following on from that Andre point about Middlesbrough and London. He says, how close were you actually for signing for Middlesbrough? Did you give it any thought?
I've got it through your. I'm very good at sort of like doing lip syncing. So I think it was how close was I signing to Middlesbrough?
Yeah.
I was very close. I'd made it quite clear to Charlton that I wanted to leave. I wanted to try and not. I loved my time at Charlton. I had a great time there. I was 26, just turned 26, and I just wanted to see Premier League had just started, and I just wanted to see how good I could possibly come. And Middlesbrough were in the Premier League, and I went, and they're the first team to come in for me. They offered the money that Charlton wanted, which was $700,000, and I went up and met Lenny, who I got on very well with. It was my Charlton manager, and so he was going to play me where I wanted to play, which was more not from the right, because I was getting fed up with being out on the wing. He wanted to play me in sort of like a free role. So I was very, very tempted. And I flew up there and spoke to them and came back and sort of like I was deciding, I was waiting for West Ham, if I'm being honest. West Ham, my team, and there was rumours that Billy Bonds wanted me, and came back home, decided I wasn't going to go north and until Mr. Keegan got me on the phone and lied to me and got me up north. So again, but I was close. It was close.
Thanks for your question, George. Debs Randall says, what's your funniest memory of working with Kevin Keegan?
There's so many things that Keegan done that made everyone feel relaxed and comfortable. The biggest memory I have of him is playing head tennis, him and Terry, in the gym at Maiden Castle. And every morning the lads used to come in at 9. We start 10:30. We started training. Lads were at 8:45, 9 o'clock to play head tennis. And I remember on the first day there, I was walking past the head tennis court, and Terry and Kevin just said, "Get yourself a partner. You're playing head tennis." I'd never played head tennis, and I think I was teamed up with Franz Carls. He walked past at the same time, and we got absolutely annihilated. And then I was forever trying to look for a partner to try and give them a game. And eventually came me and myself and John Beresford got together and we started playing them. And I love those times. There was piss taking going on. There was how much have I paid for him and how much have I paid for him, and jumping up and down with on one leg, saying they can beat us for many a month. They went on with this and until we eventually beat them. And then I remember Bez had a slight injury, and Kevin said to him, "Oh, you can't play at tennis. Said you've got a bad injury." And but him and Terry just made it fun. It seems now football is so serious, so much about not losing, and we had none of that in Newcastle. And I think that was Kevin, and I think he's a huge miss to football, huge miss.
Yeah, 100%. Lonna, he says, did Rob think he would stay in the North East as long as he did and be as big a success as when he's signed? Because not many Southerners do have that kind of success or want to stay in the North East.
No, I mean, obviously, no, definitely not. I mean, it was I knew they had a very, very good team when I signed. I knew they were ambitious because Kevin was there. But obviously, you can't see. I mean, I stayed there 10 years. I mean, it's... maybe you go to a club and you think you'll be there 2 or 3 years and 4 or 5 at a push. But I was there 10 years, and in the main, I loved every minute of it. I enjoyed living in the North East. People, it was rumoured that every year I was coming back, I was homesick. My wife was homesick. My dog was homesick. My kids were homesick, and none of it was ever true. I can genuinely say I was never homesick at Newcastle at all. My wife was never homesick. We had such a great band of friends. Loved playing for the club. Loved everything about it, and still miss it to this day.
Yeah, good stuff, Rob. Right, we're going to go into the chat now for the questions on there. James Brown brings it up to date. He says, "Hi guys, what's your thought about the appointment of Graham Jones? And do you think he's played a major part in both the Everton and Southampton wins?" It's a question which is getting thrown around on social media, and I mean, obviously, a lot of people pointed, to your views. I mean, I've been quite, critical of his CV, but it seems to have changed something, Rob. I'm not sure whether it's, some people who are pro Bruce are saying that it's all down to the head coach, but, it looks like we've had some kind of bounce in the last few games.
Listen, mate, Steve Bruce on hide it to nothing as soon as he comes in, because if he loses, it's Steve Bruce's fault. If he wins, it's Graham Jones's input. So, I've been in the game long enough to know that if a coach comes in, he doesn't make that much difference in that sort of space of time. The 2 games he won, they say it's down to Graham Jones, and the one we lost is down to Steve Bruce. You can't have it. You can't have it always. I think you've got to give Bruce some a little bit of credit, really. It could have happened without Graham Jones being there. There were signs seeing it in the second half against Leeds. And as I said before, it's only a case of the players getting on the pitch and playing well, and all of a sudden, confidence comes back. They start playing well. Things start going for you. Listen. Graham Jones is not my favourite person. He didn't treat my son very well at Luton, but that apart, if he'd have stayed at Luton, he would have took them down. That was almost guaranteed. So, no, I don't think it's all down to him. I think Steve Bruce needs a lot of credit. I think it's Steve Agnew and Steve Clements. Probably people will give me a stick as well, but they deserve credit as well. They're being forgotten. It could be down to them. Who knows? Who knows what's happened? Something's clicked to the club. I didn't think we was in any danger of going down anyway. I think, no disrespect to Sheffield United, Fulham, and West Brom. I think they're so far adrift. Whoever comes in, whoever replaces Steve Bruce, whether it's in a year or 10 years, until the owner changes, nothing will change. Whoever comes in will struggle. Whoever, and I don't care, who they bring in. Pep Guardiola you bring in, and he's still going to struggle, and I think that's the bottom line.
Sad but true, mate. Sad but true. John Richards says, "Afternoon, lads. Rob, out of the current players that we have, who do you think should be captain?" He personally thinks Isaac Hayden.
Do you know what? I would agree. I would agree. I think there's a few candidates, but yeah, I think he's. As I said before, I think Cole Darlow he surprised me. He's been outstanding. To keep his place in goals, we've got 2 very, very good goalkeepers. So I think he's been outstanding. So Callum Wilson up front's been outstanding. But if you look in the midfield, John Joe Shelby is with so much ability that he just frustrates you. He seems to drift in and out of games, but I think Isaac Hayden has been the player that seems to be steady and never has a bad game. Never probably gets the star man, but he's always there or thereabouts and putting tackles in. And so yeah, I wouldn't say that's a bad shout, really.
Yeah, okay. MS, he says, "Good afternoon, lads. Rob, with a fully fit squad, what do you think is our best formation and starting lineup? If the takeover goes through, who would you like to be our manager next season?" So take the first one first. What would you say the best formation is? Because we're not overloaded with front players, so I suppose it's it's one of them which picks itself. But what's your take on the best formation at the club at the minute?
Well, it's very difficult. I feel it doesn't seem that we know what our best formation is, or we know what our best team is, or our best players are. Callum Wilson would start up front. You'd probably have, because we've got wide men. Say Maximin, who's probably our most talented player, would play on the left. You'd play probably maybe Fraser on the right, and then Almiron, you've got to try and get him into the game. He's done a lot better recently. I mean, I've been critical of him because he runs around and people think that's enough for Newcastle. It's not. He's now started to actually score goals, and maybe that's because he's had a bit of a freer role. Maybe that's his best position. I think Willock's a very, very good signing for us. All our midfield players seem to be the similar sort of players, and I think he gives you something different. He's like he gets in the box. He's got great energy, and I think we need someone to break past Callum Wilson and cause problems. We've got a lot of players that want to play and want to pass and play in front of the back four. We need someone who's going to break it up, and so I think he's a very good signing, you know. And it's very difficult because it's changed so much since we played. You know, we played such attacking, flying football that it's and that's what I like to see. I like to see. Maybe that's why I don't know. Maybe that's a fault of mine, but I like to see attacking football. I like to see players take people on. I like to see goals. But we've certainly improved the last few games.
Any thoughts on a potential new manager if the takeover goes through? I mean, God, you know, we started these a year ago and we're talking positively about it then. We're still waiting for a takeover. But if, you know, Pochettino has now got a club, Rafa's back out of employment, but, you know, is there another manager? Would you like us to see us to go down like the foreign route? Would you like to see us, you know, go for somebody more local, somebody with, you know, experience, somebody inexperienced? We're seeing after a long period where it was the same old faces getting jobs, we seem to be getting a lot of new managers, the likes of Lampard, obviously Gerrard, all getting the opportunity to take managerial positions. Wayne Rooney, another one, you know. But what would you like to see at Newcastle? What do you think would fit best?
Again, mate, I'm littering you a little bit. I assume that was about who should be our next manager.
Yeah.
You've got all Dalek on me, but again, if the takeover goes through, maybe someone, you know, Brendan Rodgers, I think, is doing a great job. So the takeover goes through and you've got unlimited money. Why not go for Brendan Rodgers, something like that? Eddie Howe would be taking a chance. Brendan Rodgers is proven. He's wherever he's gone, he's done very well. I think he's doing a great job at Leicester, and I think he seems to build the club up. And they're, you know, it's not just Leicester the way their team are doing, but some of the youngsters they got coming through as well. They go and look at players and they seem to buy the right players at the right price. I mean, James Justin, who was at Luton with my lads, you know, for £4 million, he's been outstanding. For me, he'll play for England. It's not a case of if, it's when he plays for England. He can play right back, left back, and they've done that a few times. They've spent their money on some good young players, and so if I had a choice and money was no object, then I think Brendan Rodgers would be my choice.
Okay, hopefully you can hear us for this one. Dave King just says, did Kevin Keegan ever ask you to defend?
Yeah, of course he did. Yeah, you had to do your work really. Everybody in the team had to. Maybe the only one he didn't ask to defend was David Ginola. I think the rest of us all had to defend. I had to get forward and I had to get back, and you know, certainly towards myself, and it was me and David Batty in there. We had to do a lot of the defending because, you know, with David on one side, Keith on the other. Then we had Les Byrne and Tino Spria and Peter Beardsley and Alan Shearer. So most of it was left to myself and David Batty to defend. So yeah, I did a lot more defending than people give me credit for, I think.
Yeah, definitely. If you're a first-time visitor to the channel, please subscribe. Give the programme today a like by hitting the thumb and give it a share to your social media, Twitter, Facebook and LinkedIn. Join the comments as well. Plenty of comments to get through, and we'll jump in with the next one, which was from Ethan. He says, are there any players from our current squad that you would have liked to have played with?
Yeah, listen to Callum Wilson. I think it's been very good. It reminds me of Les. To be fair, it reminds me of Les Ferdinand, who I love playing with. I'm sure if we get him the ammunition, that he'll score goals and he'll. But yeah, there's you know, Alan said Maximin looks very exciting to play with, doesn't he? And I think I'd be giving him a few bollockings every now and again. But I like to see players. As I said before, it's exciting. You know, Keegan used to say to us before we went out, just go and entertain the crowd. He said, go and get the crowd on your side, go and entertain them, and that's what we did. And I like seeing players that entertain people.
Yeah, me too. Mark says, afternoon lads. Rob, have you ever been offered any roles at Newcastle in the past? And if so, in the future, is there a role you think you can have an influence in? No,
I've never been offered anything at all. At Newcastle, nothing at all. Yeah. Listen, I don't know what it would be, but if new owners came in and offer me something to help the club, and I would definitely be up for that. I don't think while Mike Ashley's there that any chance of anything like that happening, but yeah, I'd love to do something with the club again.
Okay, Martin Nesbitt from Loaded Football. He says, "Hey fellas, Rob, you were one of the best box-to-box midfielders I've ever seen in a Newcastle shirt. How hard did you train in the sessions, or did you just have a really good engine?" I suppose he's asking if you were a slacker in training there, Rob.
Well, you know what? I wasn't naturally. You see a lot of players now are naturally very, very fit and can get around a pitch. I had to work hard at it, but one thing I hated doing, and might surprise, but I hated running for the sake of running. So, if you put we used to do 12-minute runs and 25-minute runs through the forest, and I was always in the slow group. So Keegan, we used to have a run round the river in Durham, and he'd set the slow group off a minute first, then he'd set the second slowest, and then he'd set the fast group coming trying to chase you. And I remember, John Beresford and Warren Bart, and we're always in the fast group, and they'd caught me by the bridge, which is about halfway. So I hated running around a pitch. I hated it. But as soon as the game started, as soon as the eight-a-sides, the football, I could run all day. I just had to have something at the end of it. I had to have a ball, and I had to, if you ask me to run around a pitch, I'll be last. If you ask me to train for 3 hours, playing a game or playing an eight-a-side, getting up and down a pitch, I would do it all day. And I think that's where I got my fitness from.
Yeah, okay. A couple of questions coming in about England. So let's go to Tom Dixon's. He says, "What was it like making your first appearance for the England team and getting your first ever international goal?"
It's something I dreamt of. It's something everybody dreams of. I mean, I was nervous. I was a bit older than probably a lot of people. I was 28, I think I was. So you're playing at Wembley. You're playing in front of your family, playing in front of a crowd. And your first time for England, all the thoughts go, am I good enough? Can I do it on this stage? But I just loved every minute of it. It's just something you dream about, playing at Wembley for in the white of England and scoring at Wembley. And I absolutely loved it. I was just a bit late getting there, really. 28 at the time I made my debut, but I enjoyed playing for England. I didn't play as much as I would have liked, but it's the pinnacle of your career. It's what you aim to. Whatever career you're in, you try and get as high up as you possibly can. And the highest you can get in my career was playing for England, and I managed to do that.
Raji Gaji says, "Hi guys, I hope you're both fitting well. Did Rob ever consider a move abroad? And if so, which club would have been his choice?"
Well, you can only consider a move abroad if someone from abroad comes in for you. But as far as I'm aware, nobody ever did. So I don't know. I don't know if I'd liked it. Moving abroad was moving to Newcastle for me. It was totally different to what I was used to. The language was different. The people were different. It was colder. So that's my move abroad. If I had a choice, I think Barcelona's the Juventuses, the AC Milan. They're the ones when I was growing up. They were the team. So but I'm not sure it would have been for me really.
Okay, Claire Brown has a story. She says, "When we were around 14 years of age, I had a crush on Shearer. My mate Helen loved you, Rob. She carried a sticker around of you, and she gave me a Shearer sticker. I kept it for years."
No, listen, there's no comparison. He might have scored more goals than me, but I'm better looking than him. I've got more hair than him as well. So.
DT says, "Rob, what were your thoughts when the team that came so close to winning the Premier League was dismantled?"
Again, it's very difficult because it shouldn't have been dismantled. We had a very, very good team, and I still say if we'd have just tinkered with it a little bit, the players were still certainly the majority of the players were in a late 20s, so we still certainly wasn't over the hill. We had a great team. Just signed Alan Shearer for when Keegan left, we just signed Alan Shearer, 15 million. That was meant to be the final piece in the jigsaw. But I just think if you tinker with the team just a wee bit, and we had the squad, we had the players to go on for another 2 or 3 years, in my opinion. I think it was dismantled too quickly, and obviously it's very disappointing when you see good players leave.
Dave Cook says, Rob, why do you think so many modern footballers can't cross a ball?
Well, I think they can. I think maybe they're told not to. Whenever we were playing, we had two wingers, and their sole job as wingers was to get the crosses in. I think now, I don't know whether it's to do with academies or under 23 football or foreign coaches, but everyone seems to want to pass in front, and let's walk the ball in the net. And sometimes it looks great. I think if you get out to the wingers, cross it in, it's nothing like seeing a great cross and a great header going in. So I think they can do it. They're technically good enough to do it, but I think maybe they're told not to.
Okay, Toon Bants, good afternoon. He says, hi, Rob, if you could put any player you played against in a Newcastle team to play with you, who would it have been?
I would probably say Gaza. I played with Gaza for England. I would love to play for him at Newcastle. I think there was rumours at one stage that Keegan wanted him as well at Newcastle, and I love playing with him for England. I love the way he played with a smile on his face, and had so much ability. So much more ability than the players around him, myself, and that. You just sometimes you looked in awe at him, and I would love to have, played at his height of his career at Newcastle when we were a really, really good team.
Spenny Mag says, Rob, have you ever fancied going into management?
Well, again, I've never really had the opportunity. I wouldn't say, I pushed myself to go into management. I spent a lot of time watching football. I always do because my sons play. And I think management is something you've unless you're sort of like, you fall into it and you're it's something that you've got to push yourself to. It's 24/7. It's a very, very tough job to do. I don't envy any manager because that's all you're ever thinking about. All the phone calls you get, and it's all the things you do. And I wouldn't be able to tolerate not being able to buy my own players because that would. So I don't think I'll ever be a manager now because the reason you would bring somebody like myself in is I think I can see a player. I think I can tell you who's a good player. I think I know if good players are playing badly or bad players are playing well. And I just think managers get a rough ride. Listen, if you bring them in and they sign players and the players are no good and the team loses, then you can sack him. If somebody else brings the players in for you and they're no good, then why can you sack the manager? I don't know why you bring a manager in just to have somebody who's probably got lesser experience and lesser knowledge of the game than him, as in director of footballs or owners or chairman, and you buy players for him. I don't see the point in it.
Okay, Jason says, Rob, would Keegan's gung-ho ethic of you score one goal, we'll score two work today, or is it a dangerous tactic these days? I mean, I suppose you could say Leeds probably play a bit like that these days.
Well, again, it's listen. It'll work anywhere. It'll work at any level, any time, any era. If you've got good players and they can score goals, it would work any time. Listen, you might make goals. Why would it be any different? I don't understand it. We're a lot more tactical these days. Does it make it a better game? Does it make it a more exciting game? I don't think so. I certainly think the clubs should give managers a bit more time to build a team, and I think that's probably one of the reasons why we see managers not trying to win games rather than lose games. Not lose games, if you know what I mean. Rather than not lose because you're afraid of you losing your job. Rather give them a little bit of time. Get the players and they want to get in. And if this for me, if I owned a club, and I would get a man in that I would want to be in for 3-4 years, so he could. And Newcastle need that. Newcastle. If somebody buys this club, and I hope to God that somebody does, and then bring somebody in who has a vision like Keegan had, and actually can to run the club from top to bottom really, and shows their vision of how they would do that, rather than have somebody come in for 2 years. He's going to leave after 2 years, and your club are trying to find a new manager. So that's what I would do.
Last 15 minutes, get your questions in. Jonathan Ward says, hi Rob, when you left Newcastle for Derby in 2002, did you think it was the right time to move? Or did you think you could have stayed longer and played more games for the Sir Bobby Robson team?
Well, I was still playing. It was a decision that was, I don't know, maybe I was a bit rash, but I thought that the club were sort of like weren't treating me the way that I've been there 10 years. And I even think, charging 250 grand to let me go after 10 years, it was a bit cheeky as well. If they didn't want me anymore, then just let me go after 10 years service to a club. But listen, I don't regret going to Derby. I had a great time at Derby. I went there because I like John Gregory. Good friend Warren was there, and I had a good time there. If I had my time again, would I put a transfer request and leave? Probably not, but that's what I was like when I was younger. But I just, I'm one of these players that if I feel I'm wanted, and I feel that I always felt wanted at Newcastle, bar the Hullet year. But I still felt wanted by the club, and I think I got to the stage where I didn't feel I was valued by the club. I was 36, and your time comes eventually, but I just didn't feel, because I wasn't playing, I was still playing. I just didn't feel that valued by the club at the time. Whether they wanted younger players in, I'm sure they did. But I still think you should value the player that's done well for you over 10 years.
David Reed, I'm not sure whether this is a great question. Did you have a man crush on David Ginola?
Wow, who didn't? No, honestly, sometimes you looked at him in awe of him. He was... see him out on the quayside and his long flowing locks and his French accent and his Adonis body. Yeah, he was. If I was that way inclined, he would certainly be one I would look at.
Terry McCarthy says, as a former Charlton player, what was it like walking out of the Valley, seeing that huge stand? I went there to see Newcastle and thought it looked awesome looking at it through the gates.
Again, I'll have to try and lip read it, mate. As a Charlton player, it was like one of the. Listen, when I left Charlton, it was a sorry state, really. If I'm being honest, they needed me to get back to the Valley. We'd been nomads for 7 years, I think it was. I mean, how that club survived 7 years of having no home and still getting promoted to the first division, the Premier League, staying in there for 3 or 4 years, and then when you see the hard work that people put into that club. As I say, they needed the money from my sale to get themselves back. But when you look at the ground and how it is now, it's a fantastic football club. It's a fantastic ground, And again, I hope the new owners there, I hope they get it right. I hope they invest some money and get Charlton back to certainly they should be the minimum in the Championship, But yeah, I mean, I had a great time there. A great time.
Yesterday we had Gavin Peacock on the show. He was promoting his new book, A Greater Glory, From Pitch to Pulpit. Toon 2020 says, Rob, Gavin Peacock said you were the best player he played with. How highly did you rate him?
Yeah, massively. Yeah, hugely. He was a very, very good player. Loved playing with him as well, because we sort of two Londoners playing for Newcastle, and both accepted very well by the crowd. But we just... herself with Lee Clark, and we just interchange positions all the time, which I love. So sometimes, when he was here with me on the Championship team, he would play wide, I would play up front. Sometimes Lee Clark would play wide right, and I would play in the middle. Gavin would play up front. We just seemed to interchange, and nobody was stuck in their position. But in order to do that, you have to have the players who can do that. I could play wide. Gavin could play wide. He could play up front. We could both all play anywhere along the midfield or up front. So no, I enjoyed playing with him. He was a great finisher. Probably doesn't get the credit he deserves for how much of a good finish he was. He was, if you like, he was very selfish in how he played, which all finishers are, and he was very, very good at it. He liked to score goals, but he was technically a very, very good player.
Ben's asking, is there a particular game you can think of where the fans pushed the team on to victory? Maybe it's a game where you were struggling and the fans had that, major effect that a lot of people talk about.
Well, playing at Newcastle, if you spoke to opposition about playing against Newcastle, they would either say, listen, keep Newcastle quiet 15, 20 minutes, quieten the crowd, and the crowd will start getting on their backs if they haven't scored. Because that's what Newcastle expected of us. But the way that Kevin showed it to us was the fact that actually go at teams for the first 15, 20 minutes, get this crowd behind you, and which is what we did. And usually we'd be at least one goal up, sometimes two goals up. And I've seen teams, physically crumble and it's not nice when I haven't had it very often in my career, but when you're 3 or 4 down after 40 minutes and you've still got another 55 minutes to go in the second, the rest of the first half, all the second half, and you've got the crowd baying for more goals and more goals. The thing about Newcastle, we never stopped. And I think they knew that. I think we wouldn't stop because Keegan would allow us to stop at 3-0, 4-0. We wouldn't be bringing defenders on. We'd be get the 5th, get the 6th, get the 7th, and the amount of times that we got 7 goals, 6 goals, 8 goals, was remarkable for, and a lot of that's to do with the crowd. And I think that it's a weird season this season because if you look at the results, we've never had a season like this. Liverpool just lost 3 in a row at Anfield, and Newcastle, the home games are where if you're not feeling right up for it, and the crowd could get you going. The crowd, you walk out in front of the crowd, and all of a sudden, your hairs on the back of your neck stick up, and it gives you another yard. It makes you run for another 15 minutes, and I think everybody, not just Newcastle, I think everybody's missing all that.
Yeah, no doubt about that. What were your thoughts when Tino arrived from Parma? Says Mo.
Well, it's quite actually. It's snowing now, isn't it? So the first image I had of him was his big sheepskin coat, snowing down on top of him, and he looked freezing cold. But to be fair, listen, I'm not a football. I took no notice of the Italian league. It didn't interest me. The only interest I had was what we were doing, and obviously I'd heard of him, but I'd never seen him really play. So when he signed, it was sort of like who's this guy coming in? But I think we played Middlesbrough away. And I think Keegan's initial plan was to let him slowly come into the team, see how he played, and adjust to how we were doing things. We were getting beat at Middlesbrough, we weren't playing well, and he came on and totally changed the game. I mean, he single-handedly he dragged us back from 1-0 down to winning 2-1. And some of the skills, some of the tricks he did was just, sometimes you're standing there, you're laughing. As I did with him and David Ginola sometimes, I'd be laughing at players trying to get the ball off them and chuckling away. And, you see players not want to go over and mark those two because they were, on their day, they were that good. So it was a privilege to play with him.
Yeah, top man. Any funny stories from Tino? We've got a question there on Facebook.
None I can say over this. He was just a character. I mean, we was always winding him up. He spoke very little English and still does. I saw him, when he comes over, his English is terrible. I think he knows mierda, which means shit, and I think that's I do remember when he first came into the club. He used to call everyone by the second name, and I used to hate it. He used to call me Lee as we were playing football, like in a training game, and I was fuming, giving him all sorts of stick, and then I spoke to his interpreter. He said that's what they do in Italy. He said so, but I was giving him all sorts of dog's abuse. I was as I used to do, and we used to tell him the wrong times to turn up for training, and and I remember once he used to hate it because he roomed on his own, and myself and Alan roomed together, and we always used to try and find out his room number when we were away, and what we used to do, it's not a very clever trick, but it's sort of you take the IO out of the door in a hotel. You can stick a fire extinguisher through it and knock on the door, stick the fire extinguisher. They put their eye, and we squirted them. And we did this to Tino on a few occasions. And I think one time he put his eye really, really close to the door, and we got him. And I think he was close to missing the game. So
Nick Williams says the hardest player that you've played with and against.
I don't know. I think I used to dislike playing against David Batty when I played against him. I thought Bats was one of the hardest players I played against. Roy Keane was a not only hard, but he was a very, very good player as well. So those sort of players, and you know, when we were playing against Arsenal, Vieira and Petit, you know, they were 6'4" and could both play. And Vieira was a tough one. So yeah, there was a few about, but they could all play football. You know, they're all very good.
Yeah. David Little says, what do you think was the main reason we didn't win anything under Keegan, considering how good we were? Was there just no thought for defence?
I don't know. I think there's a... Listen, we could go on forever. This conversation will be going on in 50 years' time of why we didn't win something. And everyone's got their own personal opinion. You know, I think we were good enough to win. I think we had the best team. Man United had some great kids coming through, but I think we had the best team. I think when you're winning something, you need a little bit of luck. I don't think we got that. If I'm being brutally honest, I don't think we had a world-class goalkeeper. I think Pav was very, very good. Shaka was very, very good. But Man United had Schmeichel, and I think that makes a huge difference. And I think even now you see goalkeepers going for 70 million, 80 million. You know, and I've got no disrespect to Pav because he was a great guy, great goalkeeper, and Shaka. But I think if we'd have had Schmeichel in goal, I think we'd have won the league by a canter.
Fair enough. Rich says, afternoon lads. Rob, what was it like having thousands of fans at training sessions at Maiden Castle?
Hard to get in afterwards, I know that. I loved it. I didn't mind at all. We used to. The only problem was because we played 8-a-sides, 5-a-side, so they actually made we didn't have to put any cones out really. They just made the pitch. They just stood around it all the way around the pitch. And the only thing was, you know, Keegan, no matter what the weather was, it was freezing cold, which usually it was in Maiden Castle in December, January. He made us stay out and sign all the autographs, and it forced you to do it. And most of the lads loved doing it, but when it was cold, you think, oh my God, there's so many people here. And again, when you're talking about people not being able to cope, some people couldn't cope with our training. You know, some people couldn't cope with all the time of this. You know, people watching you constantly training. You know, usually now you certainly get away from, you can train and there's nobody watching really apart from the management. You know, most of the time, school holidays, we had thousands watching us. So, but I like that. I preferred that. I loved playing in front of a crowd at Maiden Castle. It was great.
Richard Naylor says, when we sold Cole and Keegan confronted the fans, what was the feeling amongst the players?
Well, listen, I think Keegan at the time was, we trusted him implicitly, totally. I certainly I did. I think he knew what he was. He knew that he wanted Les Ferdinand, I think. And I knew he wanted to change out maybe the way we play. We played so much for getting Cole of the ball, which worked great. I also think Coley was, you know, the first 2 years he loved it in Newcastle. I think he was getting itchy feet as well. It wasn't, you know, I think he wanted to go. And I think Keegan thought that was, if somebody didn't want to be at Newcastle, then let me get as much as I can for him and go for a player that I know that he admired for a long time. And it changed the way that we played really. And the change, you know, having Les up there gave you a little bit, you know, Coley was a great goal scorer, but having Les up there gave you a bit more, you know, wingers getting the ball in, crossing it in. Because, you know, when Coley was there, we never really, I played wing and we always cut inside, and whoever Scott Sellers on the other side, we was just creating chances. I think give us another string to our bow where we could actually get crosses in, and we knew that Les would score. You know, we had Peter Beardsley buzzing around still. So, yeah, I just think he knew what he was doing.
Okay, last question. Been some great questions. Thanks to everybody on Twitter and on the chat for giving us these questions. For Rob, John says, are the fans' expectations too high considering the lack of trophies? And would you still consider Newcastle to be a big club under the current ownership?
Newcastle are a big club, no matter who's the owner. It's, you know, for me, and I know this big question about how do you define a big club? Is it trophies won? You know, is it the amount of people you get through the door? And listen, for me, a big club is how many supporters they got, how many followers they got, how big's the ground. And Newcastle's a big club, so no matter what, you know, whoever's in owners are of Newcastle, they're still going to be a huge club. And I think Newcastle's fans, I think it's their expectations are when you put on the black and white shirt, they want you to play to the best of your ability. They want to give you all. They want to see exciting football. I don't think Newcastle fans expect to win a trophy. I think they're expecting to see you give 100% when you put that shirt on. They expect to see good football, certainly when you play at St James's Park. Got a great crowd behind you. They expect to be excited. And I think that comes from probably what Keegan created and how we played. But their expectations are that is when you put that shirt on, you give 100%. And I think maybe that's the least you should expect from players.
Great answer. Didn't expect anything less. Rob, absolutely fantastic to have you on. Don't forget, guys, you can join us tonight again at 6 o'clock till 7. It's your opportunity to take the show over. It's the 5-minute rant. It's been a big success, so look forward to having a few people on who we don't know where that show's going, Rob. It's sometimes a bit of a nightmare, but it was a positive weekend, so hopefully it's a good one. And then 7:30, we're on with Ladies' Night. Join me, Sam, Kendall, Alicia and Sav tonight. We will be talking back through the Southampton game. Rob, stay safe, mate. Look forward to welcoming you back again at some point. And any last message for the fans watching? Any last message for the fans watching?
You take care.
Okay. Cheers, mate. Take care. Bye-bye.
Mate. Take care.
Critics attack. It feels like I've been talking to myself again.